and welcome to the youth leaders part of this summit. We are very excited to be here. It's nice to meet you all. I am the facilitator of this panel. My name is Sydney Kier. I am the Colorado FFA State Reporter this year. I'm very excited to be here. If you do not know what FFA is, it is an agriculturally based leadership program that is all throughout high schools throughout the nation. We have over 142 chapters in Colorado with over 8,000 members throughout high schools. We are really based on talking about agriculture and what that looks like in a leadership perspective, and we are very thankful to be here. You can see my whole team up here in front of us. And we're very excited to be here. Basically, FFA has a lot of roots, and I'm not speaking for all of FFA because I know it's not completely true for all of FFA, but I do know that we are based mostly in production agriculture. And what's really amazing about today is we are allowed to talk to these 4 panelists who all have a reach into the distribution and consumption part of agriculture. And we are so excited to learn from them, and I hope you all are very much too. So I'd like to introduce each of our panelists now. We are going to start here with Gianna King from Pueblo Fuji Kids. Just introduce yourself, who you are, and who you're with.
Hello, I am Gianna King. I am with the Pueblo Fuji Kids, which is a youth-led coalition here based in the Pueblo County to raise awareness about the importance of food, as well as disseminate it across the Pueblo County and the impact that it has on the food system.
And then we have Jaden Wynn, and she is with Spirit of the Sun. So Jaden, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hey, I'm Jaden, and I'm representing Spirit of the Sun. We are a nonprofit that focuses on Native youth outreach and connecting our youth and our elders back to the culture that a lot of us have suffered from because we just don't really have that identity or that connection with our Native roots. And so that's what Spirit of the Sun is really impactful in doing. And we try to redefine our conception of food and exactly what that means within our communities. And also it fortifies our connection to spirituality because we believe that Mother Earth is the creator and she gives us life. And so we kind of try to certify that bond among our community.
And next here we have Jay Links, and Jay is originally with Platform, correct? But he also is here kind of representing himself. And if you'd like to talk on your art project, we would love that.
Hi, I'm Jay. I am an intern leader at Platform's Art Lab program, which is a program that focuses on connecting adult artists and youth artists together. And I am here because I personally recently did a social justice art piece in an art show recently about food deserts in Denver. I'll expand a little bit later.
Yeah, we'll get into that. And finally, we have Jonathan Cable with CAM's Ag Academy through CSU. So if you'd like to introduce yourself, Jonathan.
Sure. Hey, y'all, my name is Jonathan Cable. I am currently a grad student at Colorado State University in the College of Agricultural Sciences, where I get to pursue a Master's of Agriculture Teacher Development specialization. And today I get to represent CAM's Ag Academy, which is a program designed for youth outreach across the entire state of Colorado. As a land-grant university, Colorado State is committed to inclusion and access for all Coloradans. And so today I get to speak a little bit about how we get to include youth in the conversation and introduce them to agriculture, some of them for the very first time.
Thank you. If everybody could please give them a round of applause. The beautiful thing about today is that there are many facets of the agricultural industry that each of these panelists represent, as well as myself. And we're so excited to be able to do that. The goal of this panel today was really to focus on the fact that we are youth, and there are endless possibilities in our mind as far as agriculture and how we can change and better the food system every single day. And these guys have started some really amazing projects, and we are so excited to talk to them and hear from them, because when it comes to youth, we're just kind of reminding ourselves of our beginnings and what the future holds for our food summit. So, or I'm sorry, for the food system. So we're very excited. Starting off with our very first question, Gianna, I'd like to ask you if you would just please describe your experience in the Colorado food system, who you're kind of representing. I know we talked about that a little bit with Pueblo Fuji Kits, and also what you hope to accomplish in your role.
Okay. As a Fuji Kit, I've allowed myself the journey to really take this project and soul search. Food has kind of allowed me to find myself and truly connect with my being. I indulged myself in this process for community service and became an advocate for young people in my Pueblo community. The children and families during isolated times of COVID, this group has allowed us the ability to connect with small businesses, local farms, and products that enrich the Pueblo food culture. The foods that we enjoyed so much, we fermented to greatness, to be shared using local resources to connect with people to the goal of what may be a fed community. Now, with this ideology in mind, Pueblo is a food desert. 1 in 5 children have dietary restrictions, and statistics of adults don't vary much due to the economic stability as well as health access and poverty rates. We pushed out a survey to our peers of high school students within the Pueblo community, asking what their food intake is, as well as what they see in their community, along with the resources they have access to. With the little knowledge on how to grocery shop, as well as for themselves, for the head of the household takes on the role of kind of providing for their family, while feeding others into their role as consumers of, as well as students and then members of community and their roles in their family. This lack of communication of teaching what food education really is and food sustainability can be is lost somewhere. And seeing inequalities within the community, such as individuals who are homeless and those of food insecurity, as well as what they experience at school and see with food waste and their lack of nutrition limited options because of school lunch. When we surveyed our peers, this was a highlight to the jumpstart in our process of what values and goals as a group we developed. How we can firsthand create accessible ways for our peers and youth and adolescents to access healthy food. Therefore, we developed programs such as Cooking with the Fuji Kits, which is where we provide recipes based with using local ingredients within the Pueblo community to adolescents as well as youth, which is a follow-along cookbook, and well as a video of how to prepare the meal made. We've also done teachable workshops as a way to gather community together, especially with those who have attended previous events, as a way to provide a safe space to this introduction of hearing conversations of needs and putting action to them. We have also served and integrated local produce to soup kitchens and local shelters, as well as community projects. The Fuji Kids was the first youth group to paint the mural on the historic levee that represents our youth advocacy journey, as well as facilitating the youth group session at a previous Sun, Soil, and Water Summit, and reenact our experience as consumers. This has all been funded from grant money received from an ASG grant, as well as the Blueprint to End Hunger Relief, which the Youth-Led Coalition was awarded, and this has allowed us to jumpstart these journeys, as well as create ways for the youth to create an accessible opportunity for those who care about the community and have formed a relationship with food to expand on their horizons. With the Fuji Kids, we have gathered these assets to release the stigma, to learn, and to look to our community and peers for the resources to provide us with this nourishment.
Thank you so much, Gianna. Jaden? Oh, yes, please. Jaden, I'd also like to ask you a very similar question. What is your experience in the Food Summit, and especially with Spirit of the Sun, which is a really amazing organization? How has that assisted you in really better understanding the food system while also allowing you to help educate others?
Yeah, so I joined Spirit of the Sun about 2 years ago, and I've been with them ever since. I really enjoy doing the work that we do because within my community, within the Indigenous community, we have a huge struggle with cultural loss. And what Spirit of the Sun allows me to do is it allows me to connect to my culture, and also my siblings are here, and they also get to learn about issues that are related to the Native community and a lot of the things that we are concerned about. In particularly, we did the Indigenous Youth Regenerative Agriculture Program, and we started talking about how we can take colonial organized agriculture and bring it back to our communities, because we represent a lot of the majority of the population in like agriculture, especially since we're Native. And so what we talked about was how we have different forms of food. Like our conventional definition of food is so Western that it doesn't really encompass stuff that grows well in Colorado here. So we talk about native plants and how we can grow those really well here, and how we can, if we're gonna commercialize and like organize crop production, we should do that more with plants that are accustomed to our drought state. So that's something that I think will help our food insecurity. And I think we can kind of create this relationship with food again that's really important, because we don't really understand where food comes from, how much water it takes to produce the food that we're eating, what we're consuming, and the body, the mind, everything is connected, right? So a lot of the issues we're seeing in healthcare and a lot of the issues we're seeing with mental health can be correlated to the food that we're consuming and the relationship that we have with it. So I want to encourage youth to start growing their own food. Like, there's ways that you can use plastic bags, which are terrible for the environment, and we don't want them anywhere near anything. But to reuse them, you can start producing mycelium farms in your home. Or you could take these plants that grow well here. You've probably seen them because the slide has been going for a lot. And they're natural medicines, because we all know that the healthcare system is messed up. And sometimes you just can't make that journey, or you just are scared by the stigma of healthcare. And so you can use these natural remedies, and Natives have used them for generations. And we also just talk about what can grow well here, because we're a drought state and we're having a water crisis right now. So if we want to have organized agriculture, right, but we want to grow stuff that doesn't grow well here but has been mass produced, like maize or like corn, or those things consume a lot of our water, and we need to be very careful about that, because our state is not accustomed to, we are the headwater state, but our natural waters are contaminated and not maintained, and so we have to outsource for a lot of it. And another important thing about Colorado is that we are the headwater state, so we're a mountain, right? So all the water we have goes down to the other states in our nation. And so what happens when we don't maintain our water quality up here, it affects everywhere that our rivers go. So like the South Platte River, all of our freshwater currents, if we don't maintain that, and if we don't make sure that there's water rights and we're treating our community properly, then every other state is also going to suffer because of it. So, just my thoughts.
Yes. Thank you very much, Jaden. I do have one more question for you before we get to Jay, if that's okay. I'd like you to kind of speak on your youth regenerative agriculture program, if that'd be okay, as well as what you guys are doing with mycelium.
Okay, so this was a 7-week program, and it was really hands-on because we try to challenge traditional education structures and like schooling structures. So everything we did, we had like activities. Sometimes we had winnowing, which is an indigenous practice where you take corn and you put it together to kind of get the seeds loose. And we ventured out to Emerald Gardens, and we learned about how they're taking farming and making it not so destructive to the land that it's on. They use goats as natural fertilizer so that everything they produce is organic. And they also taught us about microgreens. So seed germination is very easy, right? It requires water, obviously. But what microgreens does is you can harvest it very young, like when they're sprouts, basically. And then that can be another source of food. So instead of having like a whole head of lettuce, you have microgreens. And they also have mycelium farms. So basically, mycelium is a weird thing, right? Okay, so mushrooms, think like mycelium. Okay, so this is how I explain it. There's a tree, right? An apple tree. The tree is what it is for like mycelium. It expands, it sprouts, it is responsible for like just basic mechanics and stuff like that. But the fruit, like the apple, is what we see as the mushroom. But the cool thing about mushrooms is that they can turn in and out. So they can bounce between mushroom and mycelium. And that's why they're really good at reproducing and spreading across different areas. And so the work with mycelium is it can repair brain tissue. It can bring bacteria communities back to regions that are kind of super dry. So like, let's say we have that pine beetle infestation, up in the mountains, and we can solve that by having mycelium farms, like having mycelium and training it to consume the wood that's there, and then also bringing back the bacterial communities to the soil. So, and then the whole spirituality part is everything that we do is in respect for our relatives. Like that's our fundamental belief. We need to be good relatives. And so it doesn't matter if we're blood, it doesn't matter if we're the same species, we all are on this earth together. And so it's our responsibility to take care of each other. And so that's a really fundamental belief within our community. And that's why we do so much work with food, with the earth, with soil, because we believe putting our hands in the soil reconnects us with our ancestors. Like it helps us communicate back and get that culture that, we just don't have that much knowledge of. So, yeah.
Yes. Thank you very much, Jaden. So Jay, we would love to hear more about your art projects. So if you would please kind of describe your experience in the food system. Obviously tell us all about why you made your art project, how you kind of chose to do that, and then how you hope it eventually impacts some other people.
Yeah, of course. So, like I said, I'm in Platform's Art Lab internship, and we have resident artists that we work with for, about 6 weeks at a time. And recently we were working with a cartographer, and we decided to do a show about social justice topics or about our communities that matter to us. And I personally chose to do mine about food deserts because as someone who grew up in Denver, in food deserts, and in poverty, I wanted to find a way to represent this instability and division between our city just based on accessibility. So trying to think of words to describe what it is. I like to call it a mobile. There is a picture up here that's next to a picture of me. And basically, I separated each community in Denver based on the percentage of people in that community that are in a food desert. So it's all color coded, and the first strand is 90 to 100% of people in that area are going to be in a food desert. Going all the way down to white is 0 to 20% of people are in a food desert. And the impact I was hoping it would have is to make people stop and think, like, where do your friends live? Where does your family live? You know, like, how does food access affect the people around you, and how does it divide our communities? I personally also chose to do it because, as someone who was partially raised by my grandmother, who lives in a warehouse district with 0 to, I don't know, 10% of any food around her, and she's also disabled, and I just have a lot of passion for making sure that people understand others' situations and to join together as a community to work through those. Platform has not only the Art Lab program and artist residency, but also works and has a food drive that they provide to all of its interns and the surrounding neighborhood, that anyone is allowed to come in and take as much as they want when they're available to, along with mental health services and public transportation services. I really just wanted to make something to make people think about your community and what you can do to give back to your community and how to connect our communities together.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jay. And I do have one more question for you as well, if that's all right. You and Gianna have both talked a lot about food deserts, and you mentioned it. I do believe Jaden kind of added some stuff about food deserts as well. Would you please describe those and what they are for the people in this audience who do not necessarily know what food deserts are?
Yeah, of course. At least from my knowledge, a food desert is if somebody lives in a space where they are not, they don't have access to healthy food within a 10-minute walk from their housing or wherever they live.
Thank you. Okay. Finally, we have Jonathan back there. Jonathan, I would love to ask you, what is your experience within the food system? You know, who do you represent? And what are you also hoping to do with your role?
Yeah, for sure. So I am a native to Colorado, to northeast part of the state, from Brush. Go Beet Diggers. So I am, from a non-traditional background, even though I grew up in a rural area. And so going to Colorado State University, at first to study landscape architecture, even though it was in the College of Ag, it was really a privilege to be considered part of the ag family. And as we think about land-grant universities and what they represent in access to education, that really embodies the spirit of CAMS Ag Academy. And so CAMS is C-A-N-S, and that stands for Colorado A&M, which was how we were founded back in 1870. And so with CAMS Agricultural Academy, we extend not just across our community there in Fort Collins, but also across the entire state. We do that through a variety of very intensive programs, whether that be at a local school, whether that be at a local county fair, at state fair, and now we also get to be held and have a space at the new Spur campus here in Denver with Colorado State University system. And so what we get to do with CAMS is a 3-step process. So we start with badging, then we move on to building, and then finally with bridging. And so first with badging, that is some way to incentivize learning about agriculture. So like my friends here have already talked about, not everyone has the privilege of learning or having experiences of knowing where their food comes from. And so at CSU, we want to first inform students and inform youth where their food comes from. We get to do that through different commodity games. We get to talk about seed germination, very hands-on interactive processes and programs that we get to do through CAMS Classroom in these spaces. And after you are able to show that you have learned something about the Colorado food, you then get to recite a junior ag ambassador oath. And being a previous Ag Ambassador at CSU, it's super fun to go up and make the little ram's horns and have the youth recite the oath that they are proud to be a junior Ag Ambassador, that they want to be passionate about learning more about agriculture, where their food comes from, learning about natural resources, and then sharing that excitement with their friends and their family when they go home. And so that's just one key aspect. You can actually see the little badge up on the screen whenever that slide comes up. So we get to first do badging, and that's just a way to expose youth and kids to agriculture. The next is with building. And we're super excited to be at CSU Spur in the Mortgage Learning Lab, where we get to have problem-based learning activities and modules. Problem-based learning is where you are looking at an issue. There's so many wicked issues that we see in agriculture these days. And then we get to inform youth through both expert facilitators and then also through providing resources for youth every other week, starting here February 1st, about different issues ranging from how we are recovering from COVID-19 in the food system, how we are using every single drop of water to its fullest potential here in a very arid state. And then also learning about, how are you going to make an impact in your community through being an advocate for agriculture or for being even an ag educator in the future. We get to do this on a really awesome, grant that we have, and we are able to do it not just here in Denver, but also spread these resources across the entire state. Anything that we do with our CAMS Ag Academy is not just something that's focused in Fort Collins or in Denver, but we continue to look for opportunities to connect with folks that are interested in spreading ag education and making partnerships, especially with folks that are already educating youth about agriculture. And then finally, we have bridging. And so after we have, programming with CAMS Classroom that's focused on K through 5, and then we have building, which is focused on 6th through 12th grades through problem-based learning. We then get to have bridging, which is talking about what is the next step that you're going to take as a young person in the world of agriculture. Maybe that's going to CSU and studying agriculture or studying agricultural education. Maybe that's being at CSU currently and understanding how to be a better educator and better advocate for agriculture. Or maybe that's just somebody who's really passionate about ag. They're an adult learner and they want to receive even more tools to be an effective communicator in the world of ag. So through badging, through building, and through bridging, we're really excited to be making an impact on youth. I've been able to have the privilege of not only being at local county fairs and at state fair, educating youth through these programs, but then also being at Spur campus now, getting to see some of the excitement that these kids have coming into our bright, shiny building. And, being able to be in a very flexible classroom where folks get to come in, they get excited to learn in a context-specific environment about agriculture, and then take what they are learning there back to their home communities and look for solutions there.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Now I'd like to bring it back to Gianna here for our next question. I would really like to ask, and this is kind of for each and every one of you, what has been the impact of your own personal experiences and how are you hoping to let those evolve, especially since Fuji Kids has such a new program. How are you hoping to kind of see that evolve and change throughout the next couple of years?
For the Fuji Kids, since it is such a young program, I think going back to the roots of our community as well as our origin, knowing how to process and produce, especially for youth and adolescents, their desires. The love for food to be seen in schools, that the preparation is taken to pleasure so that they could appreciate themselves as well as their willingness to learn. And as well as understanding that we have the assets in the community to do so. Education is just as important as the willingness to learn. And with us starting with children as well as adolescents, being the advocates to introduce them to this process, to eventually introduce it to their families as well, that can be enjoyable, teachable moments for their immediate community to feel that impact, but also to relieve those moments that may have lingering feelings of scarcity as well. I think the community itself is what defines the success of the Fuji Kids. We do these programs with the idea to have sustainability in Colorado, and I believe we have the resources to show that, and to give my peers the voice to do so as well, to not feel small, to not feel like their contribution doesn't matter to themselves, especially if they don't know much about the food system, but still feel like they have a place to be heard and contribute to what ultimately affects them. And that can be physically reflecting the care put to by nurturing themselves with their own creations, such as making food. Where people are not circumferencing to the resources, but instead empowering each other to search out for betterment of use as what they are given and how to make it theirs. And we kind of, as the youth, are the first steps to opening this conversation of doing so for other youth to feel that they are advocates of what their ideologies of food culture and what it means to have a healthy relationship with food can be, and also building that trust, especially with your peers, to know that there are those advocating for them in situations where, or in places where they can't physically be. That resources and scarcity isn't a struggle, but also that we as the Fuji Kids, as the community, and since we kind of started this during COVID, really integrating that idea to the Puebloans, that there are people out there advocating for them, and there are people out there who as well have progressive states of mind and open-mindedness to seek out all these different programs and groups that are happening, but then also how to integrate them back into our very own community. And for them to kind of have a broader education of what there is and what they could make of it.
Absolutely, Gianna. And I do have one more question for you. I would really like for you to tell the audience, and me, of course, how did you originally get involved in Pueblo Fuji Kids, and why are you so passionate about it now?
Well, like I mentioned, it started during COVID. For me, it was a way to still connect with my community in such a isolated time. Why I'm so passionate about it is I was one of the first founding Fuji Kid members, and we've taken assets of our individuals within the community and have given them a voice, and especially with the help of mentors that us as adolescents, those who come from communities that kind of lack togetherness, that they have the possibility to create something that they desire. And with the Fuji Kids, it has allowed me to develop leadership skills in order to kind of integrate my very own ideas as well as my peers' ideas and what they see within the community and how it could fast access them and like they can see that immediate change. And so talking to my peers and talking to my friends, although they kind of circumference in the ways of how we gather food from stores or not having that knowledge of where locally it could come from or how to even advocate for themselves in how to gather that food, instead of circumferencing to that idea, but knowing that as we connect together, and for them especially, that there are opportunities for them to integrate their very own ideas within the community, just with the conversation of food, because there's so many opportunities within this specific area of study.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Gianna. Now I'd like to ask you, Jaden, how has Spirit of the Sun impacted you, and what are you hoping to do with those experiences? And I'd love for you to especially talk on your business and what that looks like right now.
Oh yeah. So you guys, let me tell you. Okay, there is so much that I've gained from working at Spirit of the Sun. I can say that I'm Native and I can understand what that means. And it's no longer just this identity that I have. It's kind of this culture, this knowledge, this oath for me personally. And the whole thing about the store, I took a semester off of school because I have my son, and I was just really bored. I was like, what am I supposed to do? School is boring, but not going to school is even more boring. And so I found avenues for passive income. And so that's what my store is. I also started a podcast. So, that's pretty cool, just toot my own horn. But it's realizing that even though it's COVID and we're in inflation and all that jazz, there's a lot of ways for you to be productive. And just because we're seeing the workforce kind of shift, it doesn't mean that you can't shift with it, And so my store sells podcast equipment, and podcasting is really big now because apparently people like hearing people talk over a microphone about stuff they really don't know about. Like, honestly, I feel like there's no credibility on these podcasts, but it's very entertaining. Anyways. So that's my business, and how it works is 10% of each sale. So like each individual purchase goes to Spirit of the Sun or to the American Indian College Fund. And my goal for this story is to kind of promote education and allow Native voices to be heard in the fight against climate change, because it's trending, right? The Earth is exploding, and we don't want that. So, but my culture and my community has known about this for a very long time. We have been trying to get this message out for a very long time. And just because people are, kind of acknowledging the crisis that we're in, it kind of frustrates me and people within my community because they don't turn to the natives, And while it's like great to save the turtles and Visco girls, which is embarrassing. I can't believe we actually did that, guys. Oh my God. Okay, but besides that, we should listen to the natives. They know what to do in certain areas. They know how important it is to be very local minded. So while it's great to save the world and go to Africa and be like, hey, elephants, we love you. We're gonna send you money. That doesn't do much for Colorado. So it's very important to see what you can do in your community, in your county, in your state, because our community has understood that each tribe has something very different. Just like each area you're in has very different like views. You know, like Hawaii, Maui, that area, they're native too, but their practices and their knowledge of agriculture or even just climate activism is very different to our climate activism. And so it's also important that we find the differences within our concerns, right? Our concern is water. And I just think that, man, I don't want to have to go through a food desert or like not have water. So we have to do something about that. Yeah.
Thank you, Jaden. Jay, I would love if you could talk about your own personal experiences a little bit, especially within the Colorado food system, if you'd like to get more into that. And then who do you eventually kind of hope to have an impact on? And why is this art project so important, especially when we're talking to other people who may not necessarily be in those food deserts?
Fair warning, I'm going to say the word art a lot. So, well, when talking about the importance of my piece, I think that some people aren't very good listeners. Some people don't hear, and I personally like to throw those things in people's faces. You know, it's really, really hard to ignore that separation when it's right in front of you, and it's hard to see that when you are in a space that you aren't experiencing those issues. You have access to food. And with my program, I think that I'm continuously impressed with, I'm impressed that we are always able to uplift youth's voices, whether it be about issues with food or any other social justice concept that many times students, and specifically students like queer students and students of color, are not listened to. My internship gives an opportunity for all of those people to have a chance to speak out. I really want to inspire more activists and youth artists to express themselves in all way, whether it be speaking or music or art, to have people listen. And whether that be in any of those areas or in another way, I just want to continue to see people like the people on this panel speak about what matters to them and why it does. I also, from my experience, I think that some people don't understand what it's like not to have access to food. And I wanted to speak about how hurtful it is to families to have to go to things like food banks that are, you know, miles and miles away from their homes, and that's their only option. I really just wanted to point out to people who aren't aware of those situations, who can't listen to what people are saying, to be able to look at it and see those statistics in front of them.
Thank you very much, Jay. Okay, and now down there to Jonathan. What has been the impact of your personal experience, especially in CAM's Ag Academy, being an Ag Ambassador? What does that look like? And who do you also hope to impact, especially with CAM's Ag Academy?
Yeah, so great question. So being an ag education student and just generally a College of Ag student at CSU, it's been really impactful just to go to local county fairs and to state fair, to be at Spur, and to see those light bulb moments in youth who maybe have never had a positive experience in agriculture before. Like we've been, I think, highlighting a little bit on this panel is that there's a lot of hard things that go on in food and in food justice and in agriculture. There's a lot of negative things that we can focus on, but in CAM's Ag Academy, our mission really is to promote and provide positive experiences for youth in agriculture. And so over the last year, we've had over 24,000 interactions with students across the state. And a lot of those have been, very personal interactions where we get to sit down with, a fifth grader and explain to them how their food isn't just from a grocery store, how it actually comes from the local farmer, how that local farmer is conserving natural resources in order to grow their food sustainably. Um, and so another great impact that we have is also in the realm of just education. So we're not only there as, a graduate student teaching undergrads how they can be effective teachers and advocates, but then we also get to inspire the next generation of educators and of ag advocates, where we are there helping with FFA members that might come and hang out with us for a day or two. We get to then also see 4-H members come, and so we get to see even 4 generations at a time educating these youth about agriculture. So we have, grad students, we have our faculty and staff at CSU, then reaching down to our high schoolers and 4-Hers, and then on to those kiddos that we get to interact with on a local basis. So I'm really excited to continue to see our impact grow as we continue to make more and more connections with extension offices, with local fair boards, with different nonprofits across the state who are looking for more learning resources and for more education resources to understand how they can provide research-backed teaching practices to reach out to the next generation and inform them that, yes, there's a lot of hard things going on with agriculture right now, but with, creative minds, we can solve a lot of those issues together. A quote that I always love to go back to is Dr. Temple Grandin, who says that the world needs all kinds of minds. And we get to see that on a daily basis in the work that we do through CAM's Ag Academy. And so, yeah, those are just some of the great things that we get to do. And I look forward to continuing that impact across the state, especially this next fair season.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. And I would very much love to point out that Jonathan talks a lot about CAM's Ag Academy, especially focusing on like 4-H and FFA, but you guys are also reaching out, especially to those local programs in the area of like Globeville and everything, right where CSU Spur is. So that's really awesome too. So we're really able to connect with a lot of different people from that campus, which is fantastic. I would now like to open up the floor to any audience questions that we might have. So if anybody would have a question or would like to ask these panelists some questions, that'd be awesome.
Yes, great. Sorry, there's like a 2-second delay on these mics. Yeah, so that's a great question. Actually, a lot of our FFA folks right here get to lead some of those tours. They actually, and I'll just speak a little bit to this, so this is kind of off topic, but as an effort to increase access to education with CSU partnerships, we actually get to partner with the Colorado State FFA Foundation, and we actually house our FFA state officers at the Spur campus. And so as part of their living, they actually get to then help us on a weekly basis lead some of those tours. And so with that, we also get to attract, and we hope to attract even more school groups coming to Denver and to the Spur campus to hopefully become not just a state destination, but also an international destination for agricultural education. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, please.
If you could share like one word or just a couple of words about what you think one of the most important things we need to consider moving forward in our food system and to create change, just love to hear.
Relationship. So there's this whole thing, it's not mainly among females, but we just have this terrible relationship with food, and it can get to the point where it's unhealthy. And I feel like understanding what you're consuming, where it's coming from, and that you know what you're putting into your body, it can build that trust back. And I think that's very important.
One thing he talked about was the water problem. And now, especially in production ag, that is a very common problem. So what are your solutions to that?
So in the Indigenous Youth Agriculture Program, we met with Ian Tavoya, and he's running to be mayor of Denver. And he is trying to acknowledge how we treat the homeless population and how, when we don't give the homeless population a place to stay, they go to those areas, right? They go to national parks, or they go and they end up, messing with the water. Sometimes they have to go to the bathroom, and there's a lot of animals, like dogs, and they just poop in the river. And it's really bad because that's a water source. And so we kind of try to encourage people to take care of their animals, not let them kind of take care of the waste that's around the water. And we also try to get plants that are good at filtering out waste into the riverbeds. And that's like long term. That's going to take like 20 years, 30 years. I'm not sure exactly what we can do like in this moment. I think maybe being cautious about how many times you take a shower, whether or not you leave the faucet on, just stuff like that. Or like if you're drinking like water and it goes stale or whatever, instead of like throwing it out, maybe finding another use for it. And then there's also hydroponic systems. So that's what I think is the best direction, because with hydroponic systems, you just reuse water, and you can also grow it it's like in a house. So like people who have apartments and don't really have access to like a lot of land, you can use a hydroponic system. And what happens is you can take like lettuce from the grocery store, hook it up to a hydroponic system, and keep growing that lettuce in your home with water that recycles itself. So I think that's really something we should look into.
I guess too, I'll kind of add on to that. So I think you talked a lot about water quality, and I think just water usage in general. That's something that we talk a lot about in CAM's Ag Academy, and obviously talking about the different watersheds of the state of Colorado, but thinking about the huge issue of where 80% of our water or more lands on the western slopes, and how do we get that to the eastern plains for some of our crops out here. And so we actually get to bring in experts and talk to these youth about those huge issues, about how do we even look at our world differently through the lens of conserving our water. And a fun activity that we actually got to do the other day at Spur was making a pumpkin pie from the ground up, basically. And so it all started with 150 gallons of water, because that's, I guess, how much water it takes to actually make a pumpkin pie. But then you're actually growing a pumpkin with however much water that takes. You're, growing grass, hay to feed your cows to get milk and all those different ingredients. And so teaching youth to see the world through the lens of water and water usage is also something that I think is a very important thing. It's not just the water that comes out of the tap, but how we're actually also supporting conservation practices across the state.
I was also going to say that the importance of native plants is they don't consume a lot of water, guys. They don't, like a pumpkin taking 150,000, that's not necessary, because we have stuff that grows here very well, and it does not need that much water. And it's accustomed to how things change in Colorado, and how every time you go outside, you need to have like a freaking jacket in your car, because you don't know if it's going to be cold like 10 freaking minutes later after you leave your house. But our plants are accustomed to that. So the plants that you guys see, like service berries, yarrow, even, okay, this isn't desperate or anything, but you can eat stuff from trees, Like you can eat the bark, you can make it into noodles. People are like, hey, I need to cut down on carbs. Eat bark noodles. It's just something that you could consider. And also, we have a lot of aesthetic stuff, right? So, we have a bunch of green plots and green spaces. But if we replace those green spaces and green plots with, these sort of plants, those places can turn into community gardens like that. And so that's another thing we could consider.
Gianna, Jay, would you like to add anything onto that? We have enough time for one more question, so please.
A lot of you talked about just the amazing things that you're doing in each of your organizations, whether it's educating people, organizing communities, growing stuff, a lot of really cool values. Can you all talk about maybe what you all see as the biggest challenge or obligation to be a person, attitude, behavior, or belief? Just something that you learn through your work that you see as the biggest challenge in your way of position.
For me personally, in the work that I've done with the Fuji Kids, one of the biggest challenges has simply been releasing this stigma of receiving distributed food. For when we put out these distributions into the community, it's not limited access for anybody to receive. And I think that is one of our biggest challenges in getting people to actually come and even know what our project is really about. And so with our community workshops and everything, we've tried to form that relationship with the community, as well as members who have already come and have picked up distributed food before, just so that we develop those relationships and that understanding of we're all in this together pretty much, and we want to hear their voices, and we want to hear their needs, and we want to do what is important for them. And when there's that lack of communication, it's hard to really tackle those necessary needs, but nonetheless has still kind of had this inspiration behind it and worth ethic to find different ways in order to gather community together, in order to hear kind of what the Fuji Kids have going on.
Jaden?
I keep turning off my mic, you guys. Our biggest issue is engagement. Like, my entire team right now. Hi, guys. You guys awake? But that it's just that. It's hard to get passionate about this kind of stuff. You know? It's hard to be like, sit in a conference for like 3 hours and be like, hey, I totally care about what we're talking about. I completely got the whole message, and I listened to everything everybody said. So that's another issue. And then we also have allyship, because there's an issue with allies showing up sometimes, and that's always difficult. Or even just the pride. You know, there's an issue when you don't want to hear what natives have to say, and when you want to speak on behalf of the natives and not invite them to kind of share their stories. And there's that issue of kind of misrepresenting the community that you yourself are trying to reach out to if you don't let people from that community speak. And that's another issue that we have. We don't have people in our community that want to speak, and then when we want to speak, people are like, hey, you're just going to sit here and be like, we invited them, and then we're just going to talk. So, yeah, that's something we have to really work on.
Jay?
I would say that one of the things that at least from my personal experience is from when I tell people the organization that I work with, sometimes I don't feel like I'm being taken seriously. I think that obviously as an artist, sometimes it's not viewed as important, especially in political spaces. And in my opinion, I think it's very important to have those representatives, and I think that, yeah, sometimes it's just a struggle to be taken seriously, to really be looked at and listened to. And with my program, I think continuously, as a nonprofit, trying to get grants and have people listen to what we say and listen to what we need and what we need our community to provide to us so that we can provide to it, is sometimes really, really hard. So.
And I should have mentioned this earlier, but Jay's project is actually here in the building. And I don't know exactly where, Monique, but you
Yeah.
guys will all be able to see that. So
It's actually on the staircase, like right outside our room. So if you go up the staircase, you'll be able to see it right there.
And Jonathan, how would you like to answer that question?
Yeah, so there's a lot of challenges. So I'll try not to like speak on all of them. Especially for thinking about agricultural education. There are obviously limited resources in communities and especially in school systems when it comes to ag education. I think one of the hardest things is that ag ed is seen as kind of this auxiliary piece of education where it's not seen as, you know, people should be learning about where their food comes from first and foremost, because that's one of the biggest things that you need to know in life. So I think that's one of the biggest problems that we face is that, just that seeing it as an other. And then I think too, as far as engagement, having not as many folks being interested in ag education. So it's very hard on our staff team to be all across the entire state, trying to reach and access these different communities and their needs. And so I think just, again, with engagement and trying to figure out, you know, how do we get more folks and more young people engaged in bringing up the next generation.
Thank you. So for this very last question, I'd like to extend this to all of you. I just want to know, what's the biggest thing that you would like to see in the Colorado food system? Oh, go ahead, Gianna. Sorry. See change anyway. Yeah. What would you like to see change?
I think my biggest takeaway, not only being up on here on this panel with everybody, but just being able to experience the food system for myself, is learning about everybody's different aspects within the food system, which we all service for food justice, but forming these connections to grow together and introduce alternative ways to appreciate our individual well-being, as well as creating a safe place through food. And being here and opening up this conversation is just that, the change in which, as youth, our visionaries, the next generation, to sustain the change and allow for this communication, this conversation to actually go somewhere, and to integrate ideas from everybody and then take them back to your own community. Because that togetherness and that appreciative of cultures, food cultures, other people's food cultures, but also how your role and how appreciating yourself can allow you to appreciate those around you and appreciate the food around you as well.
Thank you, Gianna. Jaden?
Is it? Okay. So I want us to start not mass producing, because I don't want it to be organized. I just want us to start growing our own food like we used to do in the past. You know, it just used to be like another chore that you did. And I feel like if we do that, we kind of eliminate the reliance on massive agriculture production. And we can also combat food deserts with that, because if you need food, you just go eat what you grew. And what's great about hydroponic systems, I don't know a ton about them, but I did have a presentation and I learned. But what's great about it is you can grow it in your house. So depending on the season, it doesn't really matter. Like if it's cold, it doesn't affect you as much as if you were farming on a plot of land. And you can take what other people have grown and just keep it growing. So that's something I think we could start doing, is teaching people how to build their own hydroponic systems in their houses, how to start their own mycelium farms. I mean, plastic bags are terrible, so if you find a good use for it, like making mycelium farms, you should do that.
Jay.
I think that through my program, I've really had a perspective of community. I agree with a lot of what Jaden said, just that I would like to see people be able to grow their own food and support each other in their community, for us to be able to rely on community gardens and each other instead of large organizations and corporations that do not have the people at heart. And yeah, just being able to use each other's skills and knowledge and learn off each other, and have ethically grown food that you can give to your neighbors and your community.
Go ahead, Jonathan.
Yeah, I would say kind of like what I even just spoke to is ensuring that education about food and agriculture, that it's not something that is a unique phenomenon in today's society, especially for youth, and also that careers in agriculture and in growing your own food would not be seen as maybe like a lay job anymore, that it would actually be seen as a profession. I think a lot of youth, especially today, don't see the value maybe in running your own garden or a farm, because it's seen as kind of this subordinate opportunity, instead of maybe going in like working in a city or working in a different profession. So I think seeing agriculture as just a very profitable career and position for youth is something that I'm really passionate about continuing to advocate for. Obviously, advocating for agriculture is important, but especially giving youth the opportunity to make it into a career is even more important.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jonathan. As we're kind of getting through here, we're running a little early on time, so I hope you guys don't mind. I would like to ask just one more question, end it on a high note. If you guys would tell me just what your favorite memory has been from working with your specific organization or on your specific project, and whoever would like to go first. I don't want to rush anybody, but just a quick little story.
So, for the Indigenous Youth Regenerative Agriculture Program, we hung out at this dude's house, James Weiser, and he's an interesting personality type. And he was just throwing out deer poop, you know? He was like, look at this bison poop, it's amazing. And he just put it on the plot. And then Adelaide was just a G, and she grabbed poop and just threw it everywhere. Natural fertilizer, you know? But I was also pregnant at the time, and I was having a rough day. Like, if you're pregnant or if you've been pregnant, I was almost to the point where I was giving birth. Maybe should not have been doing this, but but I ended up just having a sit on the pathway, and I almost died in the bathroom too, because I was not having it, man. And everybody just took care of me, so that was really nice. I think I saw everybody being like, "Hey, don't die. You could die after you had the baby, but not right now." And yeah, so they just took care of me, and yeah, they were also throwing around poop. So that is interesting. Oh, and you can so James Weiser is crazy. Okay, he's not crazy, but he is able to take anything and put it back in the earth. So like the lobster shell, or shrimp shells or even like chicken bones, he can put that back into a compost pile, which is usually you're not supposed to do that, but he found a way to do it. And then he also found a way to train mycelium to eat different types of wood. So that's also cool.
It's fantastic. Anybody else?
I guess I will. So I think, and this isn't my personal story, but I know it's just a story that we have time and time again in Cam's classroom and giving out our Junior Ag Ambassador badges. But a really cool way that we get to do that in a platform that we have and have had for quite a few years now is actually at National Western Stock Show every January, and where we get to have Ag Adventure. And it's been cool to see students coming back year and year again, telling us how they remember going through Ag Adventure years ago, and especially with our badging program now, we were able to give a young little kid a badge for being a Junior Ag Ambassador back in 2020, right before the pandemic hit. And then we didn't have Stock Show in 2021. But then this past January, he actually came back to Ag Adventure with his family, and he was wearing his Junior Ag Ambassador badge, and he was super proud of it because he knew that he was a Junior Ag Ambassador, and that he was able to, be excited about agriculture and about food. And so it's really cool just to see that impact. And kind of like what Jaden was saying, one of the biggest things is relationship. That's what we focus on with every single interaction that we have with youth through CAM's Ag Academy, is those relationships and those small moments that we get to have with youth, even if it's just giving them a little plastic badge, but knowing that they'll look at that and they'll remember it and they'll get to share it with their friends when they go back to school the next day, and that is just a spark that hopefully sets off a flame.
Yeah, Jay, Gianna, go ahead.
Okay. Gosh, there's so many memories, but I think the one that sticks out to me the most is it was our first distribution as the Fuji Kids, and we do this reoccurring, it's called Fruits with Love, where we give 500 fruit baskets to 5 different elementary schools. And the first time we had came together, we were in this warehouse type vibe, and we had got baskets, and they were Easter baskets, and they wouldn't hold any of the fruit. And so we had to change it up last minute, and we were using plastic bags, I think. And then we put the basket in the plastic bag. So it's just a whole ordeal. And then, but what's really special about it and why it really sticks out to me is the individuals who came to volunteer with us. At the time when we were doing the distribution, we didn't know, and it's not really whatever, but the volunteers who had came to help us were individuals who were staying in local shelters. And it was really special to not know their story, but to still experience this distribution with them, and how we all kind of came together to provide for these elementary students, just to kind of give them a little special thing on Valentine's Day, when it's important to remember that we all come from different walks of life, and we all are, at that moment in time, still coming together to appreciate the experience that we share together. And so it was really awesome.
Yeah, it's so hard to pick just one experience because I've been with Platform for a little over a year now. But I think a couple things that just stick out to me is the first show I ever had, like art show I ever had with Platform, which was called Listen to Our Cries. And just being able to see my other interns like make it on the news and like get to talk about what they're saying, that consistently through the shows that we've had, that podcasts that they're constantly being on, and just being able to see the people I care about and that I want to listen to being able to be heard, and then also maybe the last 2 resident artists that I've worked with, one focused on art made with nature and non-harmful to nature. And then this last one, a cartographer, which I had never even considered honestly that interesting until I spoke with her. Just different ways of expressing your values and being able to see those values heard, and especially being able to see a couple of my interns on the news about a year ago. That was pretty amazing.
That's awesome. Well, thank you all so much. And thank you to the audience for coming in and listening and hearing us all share our very unique stories. We're very excited to be here, and we hope you guys enjoy the rest of the day.